Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us at the Future Film Showcase 2021 edition, hosted by CBC Gem. My name is Bianca Lynn Harris Huang, and I'm an associate programmer at the festival. And I'm really happy to be joined by Callahan Bracken for a very small conversation about not only their film, My Head Aches When I Look Too Long, but also hopefully we can get into talking about your other works. Callahan, how are you doing today, and where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm really excited to be here. Haven't been interviewed for a while.
Okay,
Um,
awesome.
I'm in Toronto right now, feeling pretty good. Yeah.
Good. We're really happy to have another one of your works return to the festival. And I think, your work explores elements of vulnerability and identity, which are often quite sometimes melancholic, but they're balanced with a lot of playfulness that lie in like the textures and sounds of these animated worlds that you create. And I was just wondering, what did you feel you wanted to explore in this latest short that you feel like maybe you hadn't before? And where did you get your inspiration from?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Um, this, I guess, within like the scope of my work, this latest short is kind of different because, I mean, it was my first year at university. I was studying at Cal Arts for experimental animation. Um, so I was thinking a lot about how do I communicate what I want to communicate very like formally and through textures, um, and through like the animation itself. And the other thing that really shaped the film was I made it entirely like in my room in quarantine, like in a month. Um, but I was just like spending a lot of time alone. I was thinking about queer intimacy as I do often, um, as I do like for all my films, I guess. And I was thinking how a lot of the representation I saw of myself growing up was through pornography, and a lot of representations of queer intimacy that I kind of felt connected to were through pornography. So I wanted to sort of like dig into that, but also, I guess, like in this piece that is like mostly autobiographical, sort of explore like the isolation within that as well.
I think this is a amazing, I guess, quarantine film, as I'm sure a lot of
Yeah.
people are making them. But I feel like, yeah, like what you're describing was this film kind of beautifully captures this very tenuous kind of conflation between digital intimacy and identity. And I was reminded of these readings that I read. I think it was like in a media and sexuality class in my undergrad. It was from Jose Munoz, who's a scholar who like explores queer futures and performance studies. And he writes about how the documentation of queerness can be very fickle and ephemeral in nature. And it can often be lost in kind of these spaces and institutions that are guide and heteronormativity, of course pornography being a massive one of those.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, like, how is your relationship with technology and its depiction of queer intimacy kind of evolved over time, and especially in making this film? What were kind of, did you have any kind of new reflections or um, comments about it?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think about that a lot, like the relationship between my
Oh, I think
sexuality
we
and technology. Um, and it's like this very strong connection. Um, it's hard to say because I think so much of how I understand my sexuality has actually been viewed through like a digital lens. Um, and so much of how I see the way I interact with other people as a queer person has been shaped, um, by the ways I've seen myself represented through like these like different avenues of technology. And I think the reason I like centered the film around pornography out of all like these different things is because I think it was like sort of the most, it had this most interesting impact on me, because on one hand it is like this way to see yourself, and on the other it can be this like very weird and confusing and isolating thing. um So as for like recent discoveries I made through the film, it's hard to say, but I think for me it was more of just like a meditation on like those ideas.
Mhm. I guess more to that, I guess maybe a better way of phrasing questions, like maybe what kind of depictions of queer kind of intimacy and love would you like to see in film? Or maybe, sorry,
That's all right.
living near a really busy main street. But yeah, what kind of new images would you like to see of queer intimacy and love, whether that be depicted in film at large or even in ones that you hope to create yourself?
Yeah, that's that's a really good question as well, because I think a lot of the most like interesting and nuanced depictions of queer intimacy that I have seen haven't been like explicitly like queer or explicitly two queer people being intimate together. Um, and I think it's easy to say like, I want to see more gay people in TV, or I want to see more gay people in film. But I think also like within the last few years, like I feel like that dynamic has been shifting a lot, although it's like not great and it's mostly just like white gay men. Um, but I think I would love to see just like more interesting depictions of queer people that are just like, because it's hard to capture it, because I think queer intimacy, um it's not just, it's deeper than just like seeing two gay people having sex or seeing two gay people together. And I think seeing that depicted with more nuance, and like more care and attention, seeing that like depicted with like actual queer people making decisions behind it, I think I would love to see that.
And I wanted to ask also, can you tell us more about the decision to insert kind of more personal narration at the end of the short? And you have narrated some of your other works as
Mhm.
well. And I was just curious, like, to know how important it is for you to directly kind of insert yourself in these very vulnerable works, of course, that are semi-autobiographical, as you said.
Yeah. I remember saying to my friend the other day, I don't think I've made like a piece of art that is like moving, like a video piece that like hasn't had my voice in it since high school. Um, which is like funny you bring that up, because I think, and also, yeah, it's always in like very sort of subtle ways. It's like I play a character, or um like my voice is like coming from something like in the film, or it's just narration. Um, but I think like since my work is like mostly autobiographical, it's hard to call it that because it is also like little cartoons. Um, but
I'll be honest, if you don't mind me saying, when I first saw you in person, I had seen one of your shorts, I was like, oh my God, he kind of looks like
yeah,
like in the most endearing way possible.
yeah,
I
no,
that, but
yeah, I draw me a lot, which is like maybe vanity, but it could also be other things. Um, yeah, but what was I talking about? Oh, my voice. Um, Yeah, I think a lot of the time when I make films, and I still struggle with this a lot, and when I make art, it becomes very separated from like how I'm actually feeling and how I want it to represent me. And I think it's really easy to get in your head and be like, oh, this decision represents this and this represents this. And it becomes to feel very like formulated. Um, and I think me being able to put my voice in it really like grounds it like in myself and in my identity. And I think it makes it easier for me to like latch onto it and be like, oh, this is something that I have made. This is something that represents me. This is something that like happened in my life. Um, but also, yeah, it's just like important because it's me in the films, you know? And who better to voice me than me?
sure. Um, Also, kind of spaces of dwelling and like are really and kind of private spaces are really prominent in your works, like of course your bedroom, and or even just the bed itself. I was just wondering, what do kind of your private spaces like mean to you, and like what are they, and do you find that you um I guess create better maybe in your bedroom, or I was just wondering what your relationship with kind of space and
Yeah,
is.
that's really interesting. I haven't thought about that, but most of my films are just in my, like, take place in my bed. Um, yeah, that's interesting. I think, especially the last film I made, it was like in quarantine, all I did was stay in my room. So it was sort of like the experience I knew from that stretch of time. And that's like what I wanted to make a film about. But I think like a lot of my work that captures these like vulnerable moments or these like sort of like nuanced ideas of how I view myself and like how I view myself as like a body that is like able to like receive and give intimacy. Um, I think a lot of those ideas like come to me when I'm alone and they come to me like when I'm lying in bed at night and I'm like, oh, um, so I think it's sort of fitting um, that they take place within these like safe and private spaces. But that's also funny because I've never really thought about that. Like that's never a connection I've made in my brain until you mentioned it, and I was like, oh yeah, that is like a thing I do. I love when that happens. I love when people are like, this happens in your art. I'm like, oh yeah, that's true. I wonder why. But yeah.
Well, I'm glad I brought it up.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, no, it's just something. I mean, of course, I mean, private spaces are just so obviously telling of a person, and they're where, you know, you get to kind of. I think, especially during the pandemic, people were suddenly confronted with all these kind of thoughts and things that you try to
Mhm.
escape from when you leave your room, or when
Yeah,
you're alone with all these kind of thoughts and feelings, or just even confronting what you look like in the mirror, and
yeah.
your, you know, that bodily experience of being alone. um I was just curious also, so you're studying at CalArts and you're
Mhm.
doing that. Have you been doing that remotely? And what has that been like for you as a young filmmaker? How has you felt you've been challenged, you know, in your artistry, or just even meeting other filmmakers, especially during the
Yeah.
pandemic? I can't imagine what that's like to do abroad.
Yeah. So the pandemic hit at the end of my first year. Um, I took a gap year afterwards, so I only did like a few months in quarantine, but it was really challenging. It was really hard. I mean, I know a lot of people experience the exact same thing where it's just like so much more difficult to get things done and so much more difficult to like find like any sense of motivation. Um, but I think it was really nice to have this film to be like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. Like this is the thing I need to do and spend my time on and focus on. It sort of helped to distract me from everything that was going on, which is like good and bad. Um, it was a lot of work, but also it was kind of fun because I could just like leave my class on and like work on my film. Um, but yeah, like the entire thing is like hand painted, and then I had to scan in like each frame because I didn't have like the resources of the school. Um, but I think it was really nice to be able to see like what I could do even with no resources, just with like some paint and paper and a scanner.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm still super, super lucky to be able to have like the resources that I did have. Like I'm lucky that I have a computer and a scanner because a lot of people don't have access to that stuff. Um, but it was just really inspiring for myself to be able to be like, oh, I made this like 3-minute hand painted short in my room in a month. It's like, what else can I do? And then I didn't do anything for a very long time. But
Well, yeah, I mean, I was gonna ask also about the medium too, because you have done like kind of stop motion too with, I forget the work, it's something a body disappearing or something. What happens? I think it's the one where, yeah, there's a flood happening in the bedroom. One of your shorts.
oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah. How to
yeah,
hide a body.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was probably a bit ago, but yeah. So, what is there any new mediums that you're curious of exploring? You've done paint, obviously, stop
Yeah.
motion.
Um, well, I'm in experimental animation, so I love experimenting.
Of course.
Um, I think the paint was really important for this film, mixed with these sort of like digital disturbances, because I think that was very reflective of like what I wanted to do with the film, which was sort of see how intimacy, which is like this very physical and tactile, but also kind of like abstract thing, is influenced by like digital disturbances and like influenced by like digital media. Um, and like these very like fabricated things. Um, but I love um mediums. Like I love seeing what different things can do and different things can look like, and it's all I don't know, animation is such like a big broad thing. Like you can animate anything, you can draw on anything. Um and there's just so many possibilities to do. I just did an artist residency at the Toronto Animated Image Society. Um and I animated, do you know what shrinky dinks are?
No, I don't.
So
I want to
they're,
know.
they're these pieces of plastic about this big, and when you put them in an oven, they shrink until they're about this big, and they become very thick and textured. So I animated on them, and I would like shrink every frame and shoot it on a camera. And because of the plastic, the way the light look goes through it, it just looks so beautiful. Um,
That sounds so cool. Are we going to be able to see this?
yeah, eventually I have to like I finished the residency and I have everything. I just have to edit it, and
Cool.
I've just
That's
been
so
like
exciting.
knitting.
Congrats
Um,
on the residency, by the way.
thank
That's awesome.
you. But yeah, I love texture.
So I thank you so much for chatting with us. And I like as a final question that I kind of ask everybody, is what is a film that you've seen recently that you'd like to share with audiences? It could be Canadian or not, but it could be a short film or a feature,
Um,
something that I don't know stood out to you or
okay, I haven't been watching a lot of movies. I think the last movie I remember watching, I was watching this live stream of Star Wars ripoffs, and there was this movie called Star Odyssey, and it was just a Star Wars ripoff, but it was like really funny. Um, and I liked it. They were just wearing
on
funny
YouTube
little
where
costumes.
a live stream where did this on what platform?
It was on Cathode TV, which
Okay.
is this it's this LA based, it's this free LA based, it's really cool. It's a live stream of a bunch of like cult and underground films or films that aren't screened very often. Um and they do like different screenings every day. And it's really cool. You should check it out. You can just
Cool.
go to the
What is it?
Cathode TV.
Catho TV. Okay. All right. We'll have to get people to check that out. That sounds awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Callahan, for speaking with us. And I'm so excited to see what you produce or from this residency, like with the
Yeah.
shrinking and what your work goes next because yeah, we love watching your shorts and especially as somebody who's come from Next Wave, I've seen your stuff over the years and I'm very
Oh,
excited. So
that's awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I thought I'd be nervous, but I've had a great time. I love talking about art. So thank you.
thank you for yeah chilling with us today.